Your diaphragm is dependent on your rib cage position. If your rib cage is up and the front of your ribs are flared up, you'll lose stability at your diaphragm. So you're
Okay.
going to use less of the diaphragm. And when you breathe, you'll use your rib cage, you'll use your shoulders, your neck, your back to breathe. We don't want that because we want
Right.
your diaphragm to do most of the work.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people from around the world watching us, they say, "Okay, I know where British Columbia and Canada is. Where is Prince George?" Well, if you know Vancouver, which most people do, we are about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our European friends, about 800 kilometers. That puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west. That's where we are. And today a very special day because we have a special guest, Dr. Amy Novotny. And Amy is an alternative, she will tell us all about it, that takes a natural approach to a lot of issues that relate with stress, with pain, and other things, and she will tell us all about it. She is also an author and extremely interesting. Can I call you Amy?
Yes, please do. Please do.
Amy,
Thank you for having
welcome
me
to
on,
the
John.
show.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and it was nice getting to know you just a little bit before we started, so I just appreciate your time.
Thanks, Amy. And so tell us a little bit about you. So you have you are a doctor and medical doctor, or maybe tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then what your specialty is now.
Absolutely. So I have a doctorate in physical therapy. That's what I started with. And I did that for a few years. And then I started going away from that route into looking at the nervous system and studying the nervous system. And I realized that I could do more in this world and help more people if I approached my way of treatment and helping people heal through going through the nervous system. And the nervous system I'm talking about is the autonomic nervous system that refers to that fight or flight state or relaxation state. And there's also a digestion component, the enteric nervous system. But you hear the words thrown around nowadays: nervous system regulation, dysregulation, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. That's the approach that I've been using for many years now to help people alleviate pain, stress, anxiety, insomnia, trauma, all those things.
The combination of which is very common, and the whole different approach that looking at your bio that you took to it is a whole different way of looking at it.
Mhm.
And so explain that to us a bit more.
Sure. So a lot of times when someone says they have pain, like
Right,
for example, let's talk about back pain, low back pain.
right,
They'll
right.
say, "Oh, I have low back pain." They think they need to do something to their back, strengthen the muscles, maybe do a chiropractic adjustment, get a massage, and that might be helpful. But all of those types of treatment modalities, even physical therapy, is an external approach to the body. You're applying some kind of external thing to the body to elicit a change in your pain
Right,
levels.
right,
That's helpful to a point. It's not the cure all because a lot of the problem lies internally.
right.
And what I mean by that is your nervous system tells your muscles to behave a certain way on the bones and joints.
Okay,
If I'm applying something externally to a joint or a muscle, but the nervous system internally is saying act a different way, you're basically butting heads and not creating a true change in the person's body.
okay,
The problem also with doing something external is stress has an influence on the way our body works physically. So, an emotional stressor or trigger, or a mental one, or even a physical one, causes our muscles to behave differently than what we maybe volitionally are trying to get at them to do. Those muscles, in response to a stress trigger, could guard against your body and prevent you from moving. So for your back, for instance, low back pain, very common for people with low back pain to have very, very tight muscles along the spine.
Right.
And that's often because our back is very dominant in all of our movements, and we train it to work and overwork. And we even train it to guard when we are in a stress mode. For example, let's say we're in a burning building. I guarantee you, you're going to try to run out of that building as fast as possible. And when you run, you're going to lift your chest up, arch your back, suck your gut in, and run as fast as possible on your tiptoes. As
Right.
soon as you do that, your back muscles tighten up. They
Right.
have to get you out of that building as quickly as possible. That's a perfect system that we have in our bodies to
A
help us get
natural
out of danger.
reaction. Right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The problem is when we exist that way for longer than that short period of time, those back muscles learn to compress and hold us and guard us. And as
Right.
soon as they do that, we lock up, and it's going to affect every joint from head to toe.
Right.
And the emotion that you feel and that physical response can often link together. And so you can't always just release the low back muscles because one, you're storing some emotion inside you you maybe have not resolved. Two, those muscles know exactly they're supposed to work and you haven't trained them otherwise. So they're just going to keep doing that. And three, when those back muscles learn to work and dominate, you often don't even recognize that's happening. And you don't know how to change or even stabilize yourselves or even learn how to relax.
Exactly.
So we have to look at internally how do we get those muscles to let go by changing your fight or flight nervous system so it stops telling those muscles to behave that way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me because the how I relate to it is that's why you are so interesting in this because you take a whole different approach to pain and stress,
Mhm.
and I'm familiar with that because I'm a bodybuilder. I'm in the gym, and then I look at my dad, although he passed away when he was 81. No, he was 80 actually. He had a stroke, and then, but he tended to walk like forward, So I, I've been training for 15 years, going to the gym, and I always say, walk proud.
Yeah.
So that I work upright. The other things that I've had problems with my shoulders.
Mhm.
You refer to it here. How do you call it again? When you you're lifting too heavy and then you get.
Impingement.
Pardon me.
You get impingement at the
Yeah,
rotator cuff. Yes.
it's the
Mhm.
rotator cuff issues I had on one arm and on the other arm, and then contemplated surgery. And I didn't
Mm.
want to do that because fortunately I had a surgeon that I know that I asked him, he said, John, is it hurting? I said, not really, it's just trying to, get it back to where it used to be. And then he
Mhm.
said, if it doesn't hurt, then don't do surgery because much more complicated. I also had a knee replacement because I fell on my knee quite a number of years ago when it started wearing out, and I had a knee replacement. Works perfect actually, and that's the surgeon I talked to, and said, don't shoulder surgery much more complicated than knee. Don't do it. And so I didn't do it. So now, although I had the rotator cuff issue quite a while ago, right now
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me at all because I've been working through it and exercising through it, and I'm fine and doing. I'm actually training for. In 2018, I qualified for the provincials here, second bodybuilding, third in physique, qualify me for the nationals, and then qualify me for the Arnolds. And then COVID came. Now I'm training again for the Arnolds in 2025, and I'm 85. And so
That's
I'm in good shape.
yes, you are. Yes, you are. And when you're talking about shoulder problems, rotator cuff issues, labral issues are very, very common, especially in the
Exactly.
weightlifting world. You are very familiar with that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why, and I'm going to pick at you a little bit about your choice of words when you were talking about standing tall and proud.
Yeah.
There's a little problem with that when you want to be pain-free and flexible.
Okay.
When you stand proud, if you lift your rib cage up to stand proud,
Right.
it decreases the space at your shoulder joints, your neck, and your back.
Correct.
And what happens then is you can very easily have impingement and tears in the rotator cuff and labrum.
Right.
So it's not bad to be stand proud or stand tall, but do it by dropping your rib cage down, not lift it up and suck your gut up and in.
Okay.
That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. That's good comment, Amy. The other part about it is that, and I know this is another specialty of you and kind of mixing it in. The other thing that
Mhm.
I do is that I make sure that my VO2, is very important, so that I always breathe deeply and especially in working out and all the other things that I do, I recover very, very quickly once I go through my daily training with a trainer. I recover very, very quickly, and I have with the VO2, and you can possibly explain what that is that I'm if you go look at the scale for somebody 80 years plus, because the scale doesn't go any further because all those other guys are either on the couch or dead, I guess. So, but in any event, I'm somewhere around 32, which means superior to other people in my age class.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you're doing fabulous. And so, what John is talking about with the VO2, it refers to the maximum amount of, your oxygen consumption. So, we always like to be able to consume a lot of oxygen so that way our muscles can use it and we can perform at a more elite level. And it varies typically based on age or your fitness. And I'm an endurance runner. So I run
Yeah.
ultra marathons up to 100 miles. And so for me, I do it as more of an endurance thing where you're doing it more weightlifting. There's still an endurance aspect of how long can you hold, but you're doing it more as a bodybuilding, strengthening type of exercise to get muscle tone. But in either case, we want the diaphragm to work at its maximum capacity to pull air into all the little air sacs in our lungs. When it does that, and you have good surfactant, the ability to exchange air with your blood vessels, that allows you to get more oxygen into your blood. Your muscles can use it so that you can perform at a higher level. So the issue then becomes, how do you get that diaphragm to work the best it's possible for that muscle?
Right.
And this actually ties into my earlier comment about your rib cage. Your diaphragm is dependent on your rib cage position. If your rib cage is up and the front of your ribs are flared up, you lose stability at your diaphragm. So you're
Okay.
going to use less of the diaphragm. And when you breathe, you'll use your rib cage, you'll use your shoulders, your neck, your back to breathe. We don't want that because we want
Right.
your diaphragm to do most of the work. So
Right.
when you drop your rib cage down, that helps anchor the base and sides of the diaphragm so the diaphragm can then pull air in so you don't
Okay.
see yourself lift up to get air in, and you actually can get air in more of those little air sacs I was talking about so you get oxygen into the muscles better.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do is I need to, but not pull up my rib cage. So
We
keep
don't
that
want
as,
to do that.
yeah. Now, the other
Yeah.
reason that it is important because that's another, because you have such an amazing background. So, the other part that you have done, and then it is all part of our discussion, is so interesting, is that
Mhm.
you have done 40 marathons, normal, regular ones, and then you have
Mhm.
done 10. Those are 100 kilometers or something amazing, and then you have done triathlons. So you
Mhm.
must be in amazing shape, Amy.
I have, yes, done a lot, and a lot of pretty much all of what you mentioned, I've done it pain-free because I know how to keep my nervous system calm, and I know how to maximally use the diaphragm by keeping the rib cage down and not lift up to breathe.
So
So every time.
that's the technique that I never realized until you started talking about it, and I started looking somewhat at your bio. Now the other picture that I showed you earlier is that I'm going to show you it once more, and then so this is the book that I'm just in the final stages now. It will be probably in the market in July. That's a
Mhm.
picture of me, and then living young, dying old. And the objective of the book is not so much that look how good John looks. Well, to a certain extent it is, but not for that purpose, but for the purposes of saying what is the objective. What I'm saying is that at 84, nearly 84, but I'm saying it's not the number, it's the quality of life that is important. And so
Mhm.
that is my objective in terms of diets, in terms of why am I going to the gym and doing this? Because it brings me to the gym and it gives me a goal to work towards. And part of that then is training hard, and becoming a bodybuilder is just, it's something interesting to it. But the objective is to make me fit and do exactly what you are doing, is because most of the time, virtually always, I'm pain free, even with all the hard work that I'm doing. And that's why I mentioned my shoulder injuries. I worked my way through it. Fortunately, I did not operate it, but somehow I worked my way through it. But your discussion so much is important because so many people are affected by it, and the approach that you take to it is different and new, in my opinion.
Yes, I don't know anyone else out there who does it exactly the way that I do. That's not saying I don't know everyone in the world. So obviously there's could be someone out there doing it, but of all the people I've met, I don't know anyone who has that approach. And I say I'm very fervent and passionate about it because I've used it on myself. And I used myself as a guinea pig in very strenuous conditions first to make sure that when I'm teaching people this technique and this process, that it actually works. That I if I can sense it and feel it, now my job is how do I get you to feel it, John? How do I get you to feel what I need you to feel and then reproduce it until you own it?
And would you then already conclude from what you see in me at 84, nearly 84? I've been training for 15 years, and at the same time, I'm very careful with my diets. Both my wife and myself are vegan. I'm probably 90-10 or 80-20, but she
Right.
is. I, I do all the shopping. In the outside of the grocery store, not in the middle. I don't want processed food, all that kind of stuff. So, and then I go to the gym. I work very, very hard, and then I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and I'm in a hurry to go to work because I love the things that I do, and I work very hard. I have no pain really to speak of, other than so very minor things. But I'm very, very lucky. So by accident, I must be doing something right, and your feedback to me and this discussion will help me even further to say, okay, let's make sure, because what you're doing makes a ton of sense to me, is that we share it with the rest of the world here while we're watching.
Yes, and you have a very good outlook too in that you make sure that exercise and movement is very much a part of your daily routine.
Correct.
That's where people have problems. If their body is in a position that's not optimal and is likely to lock them up, the problem is when they become stationary and go to move again. Because you move every day, you use your muscles every day, you're working on contracting them and relaxing them every day, you're likely to be less in pain. You
Right.
might have little things here or there that crop up just because your body's not always in the perfect position, and no one is. We can't exist in a bubble. But because you eat well, you have an anti-inflammatory diet, so you don't have extra inflammation, so your body can heal from the stresses that you apply to it physically with the weights, and you have a good routine. And that's key. So we can do a little bit more with our bodies if we have the setup and the support system that we're providing it to allow it to be stressed and heal, be stressed and heal. Because not all stress is bad. It's just when stress becomes chronic or prolonged, that's where our body starts to respond to it, and then things start to crop up and it communicates to us. Our bodies are a great communicator. So it's a matter
Right.
of one, do we listen? And two, can we decipher what it's trying to tell us?
Now, the other thing that I find, Amy, and I love the information that we are receiving here. And what I do is going to the gym. I have a habit of pushing things. That's why I work with a trainer. I am a very good listener. He will only
Mhm.
allow me to go so far, and then gradually improve, or always make sure that we take a short break in between where required, although I don't need much of a break in between really because I recover very quickly. And but all those things are important, especially when you're pushing the limits as you did in all
Mhm.
the marathons that you do. You obviously a very, very informed expert, and you're experimenting with your own body. You will know all the feelings, and for me it is important to get the best possible information, and so it does for people that are watching us. Do not go to the gym and all of a sudden start lifting something way beyond you, because that's when you get hurt. You have to understand your body and what you can and cannot do.
Absolutely. And that's a very important point, John, is getting people to ease into something, not only for the physical reasons of your joints and muscles aren't prepared, but also for the nervous system aspect. So when you learn and you train into something new, if you can do it gradually, you're allowing your nervous system to ramp up a little bit and calm back down, ramp up and calm back down. And that allows you in time to be able to perform greater feats because your nervous system doesn't ramp up and lock you up.
Right.
And I'll use kind of my past as an example. So when I was doing the marathons and ultra marathons, I would often do them one right after another. So sometimes I did 6 marathons in a row on 6 different days, or I
Wow.
ran a marathon and 6 days later I ran 100 miles, and then 4 weeks later I ran 100K, and then a week later I did a marathon, and a week after that I did a 50 miler, all in the mountains. And so each time I did it pain-free, and the key was I calmed that fight or flight nervous system down so I could feel the muscles release in my body so they weren't excessively toned up
Right.
that would cause a problem, injury, or inflammation or impingement.
So what you're
Instead,
saying is your
calm
body is a very effective communicator if you understand what it tells you, right?
exactly, exactly that.
Now the other part,
Mhm.
Amy, how important, I believe it's very important, I'm sure you do too, how important is sleep?
Huge,
Yeah,
huge. That's where a lot of people's problems are, is they don't value sleep.
right.
If I could get everyone to sleep for 8 to 9 hours a night, I think the world would be an incredibly calmer, happier place with nicer people.
Yeah, I I like that. I always make sure I sleep 7 to 8 hours, and on the weekends, I can sleep even 8, 8.5, and then, but I always make sure that I sleep 7 to 8 hours.
That's excellent, and it's wonderful that you do that and you tell people that you do that because people have this idea that 6 hours is enough, and granted, there is a small, small segment of the population that has a gene that allows them to sleep 4 to 6 hours. It's very rare, though, but most people need 7 to 8 to 9 hours. It's what our body is designed to have.
Yeah, and those that don't, they are the exception, is not the rule.
Exactly. The
Right.
other part of sleep is you want to get sleep before midnight, at least one full sleep cycle, 90-minute sleep cycle before midnight, because the portion of what happens in our sleep cycle changes throughout the night. So
Right.
before midnight, deep sleep is more predominant. After REM sleep is more predominant. And we want the deep sleep component because that's also when our nervous system switches from being ramped up to calm.
Right.
So if
So
you
what
only go to
happens?
sleep midnight, that's
So
bad.
so say hypothetically speaking, I usually go to bed quarter to 10, 10 o'clock, then I'm in
Okay.
bed. So if I do that, then and my wife is just the opposite than me actually. She goes to bed
Uh-huh.
too, but she can't get to sleep until later. For me, when I lay
Yep.
down, I'm gone. That's it.
Yep.
I'm going to go to sleep. Now, the earlier part of falling asleep is
Mhm.
that is the when you go in the REM, right? Period. Is that so? How do you distribute it? You were mentioning it earlier. Maybe just say it, tell it to us.
Yes, so the sleep cycle, REM is later in the sleep. So
Right.
in in your sleep cycle, it's about 90 minutes. The first part is the deep sleep, and that is a part where you go from sympathetic state to parasympathetic state.
Right.
So we want that as much as possible, and that's before midnight.
Right.
And so the portion of that part of the sleep cycle is greatest before midnight. And then REM sleep is more predominant, like the hours between 1 and 4 a.m.
Right.
So earlier in the morning. So we need both. We need
Right.
all of it. But that's also, it's not just how many hours of sleep you get, but it's when you get that sleep that's important too.
Right. So, and then, which is also part of it, I'm sure, is that how important is diet
Huge.
for
Huge.
you and
Huge.
others?
Yes. So like you, I am plant-based and I've been that way for a long time, a decade. And for me and just people I've worked with, there are certain inflammatory responses that the body has to things like dairy and gluten. And granted, some people will say it doesn't happen to everyone, but there's a large portion of the population where they are reactive to it. And often people can't sense reactions to foods because they are so chemically laden by everything that they put in their body.
Right.
So I eat, like you, I eat non processed plants only, organic only, and water. I try to find more natural sources of water that doesn't have chemicals and all the other microplastics and that in it.
Right.
But all of that's setting your body up to be supported so your gut microbiome can flourish and help any inflammation that's in your body. So
Right.
we will always get triggers that cause some kind of inflammatory response in our body. But if we can
Right.
make food not one of those triggers, better that your body can heal and deal with other things that come up.
So what I say in a general way is that, and even my wife trusts me to go shopping for food, which I do, and I usually stay out of the center area because that's where all the processed foods are, and I'm not going there. So that's not what I buy. So I stay outside, and then and both of us are mainly plant-based. And I may eat some fish and may chicken, but not red meat and pork. So now the other part
Yeah.
about it is that a lot of people don't understand that maybe is that my wife doesn't want us to drink out of plastic bottles.
Hmm. Hmm.
Give me some
Yes.
feedback about that.
Yes. So more and more studies are showing that there are microplastics, so little tiny pieces of plastic that actually get into our body and create problems cardiovascular wise. They get into our bloodstream and affect our vessels, affect the plaque that builds up, and creates coronary or heart events that obviously we don't want to have.
Right.
And there are some studies out there that look at how do we get rid of it. So there are different water filters out there that claim to get rid of microplastics. I've seen studies out there that say that if you boil water and then pour it through a fine mesh strainer, that you're going to get most of the plastics out. Or you can go to a natural source or try to get water in glass bottles. And that's what I've done recently is switch to getting water in glass bottles. So it's not in plastic. And then I use glass containers for food. So that way I'm not exposed to plastics as much as possible. Obviously, there's plastics everywhere, but I
Yeah.
try to minimize what actually goes in my food and water.
Less so all the time, though, right? Because I see it. My wife doesn't use plastics wherever she can. So take glass and use as much glass as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing that I noticed, you started the PABR. That's the acronym? Is that a name for it? PARB? That it's the institute that you started and you're the founder of it that deals with all these issues. Maybe tell us something about that.
Yeah, so I say Pabar Institute.
Oh,
So
Patrick. Okay.
PABR stands for Pain Awareness Breathing Relief. So we're working to get people from whatever their pain is, and it could be stress and trauma, PTSD, into relief. And we're working on awareness and breathing mechanics and your nervous system. And so I work with clients throughout the world, virtually on Zoom, as
Okay.
well as I do have video courses that for those who want to or do something in the general sense, not specific for their body, they can take video courses and go through that on their own. But a lot of my clients are literally all over the world: Australia, New Zealand, Europe, US, Americas. So I work with people and I guide them through a process. It's not a one and done, like one time you're done, boom. It's typically a process of several weeks where we're working through whatever your ailment is: physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, whatever that is, we're working through it. And I started it back in 2018 and it kind of took off quickly in 2019. There's a gentleman that many people know. You might be familiar with Robert Kiyosaki. He was a
I don't.
co-author in Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's a world famous financial author,
Okay.
and so he's given me permission because this happened in a public setting. He needed some help, and we were on a cruise together, and he asked for help, and I helped him. So he started calling me his body healer, and that's how my business took off. And I started speaking at events, and it's just grown from there. And I just really enjoy what I do. And the pandemic was horrible for everyone, but it also allowed me to branch out into the world and reach more people, get people to think about their bodies differently. And that's really what it's about. Can I, by this conversation with you, get you to change your habits just enough so that you avoid pain or get out of pain?
I find it amazing, Amy, and partially because I'm already open for it, and I'm already, as you well noticed, both my wife, myself, are already going in that direction. That's why I'm so excited about this, because she will just love it by the time she watches this, and so now the other amazing part is that so you have a website. Maybe I just want to make sure that we don't forget the. So where do we find you on the online?
Sure. So it's called Pabar Institute, PABR Institute.com.
Okay.
You can go there. You can put in my name, Dr. Amy Novotny, or put in Pabar Institute in a Google search engine, and it will pop up. And you can reach out to me through there. I have free information on there. There's a lot of ways that you can get help or reach out to me. Yeah.
Now the other thing that you did is you also have are an author, and I saw a couple of books where you were co-author or an author, and
Yes.
tell us some about that. Have you got any of the books around you that you can share to us, or show to us?
I do have one. Let me grab one.
Yeah.
So this one is Success Habits of Superachievers. This one's
Okay.
signed by some famous people that were also in this book. So Success Habits of Superachievers. It was co-authoring with a lot of people in the personal development world, Les Brown, Darren Hardy. And what we did is we were creating this compilation of stories and information for people. What do super achievers, people who are experts in their area, who are just really pushing it hard, what are some of the habits on a daily basis
I
that
like
make
that.
up their life to
Yeah.
be able to achieve great things? And most of the people in here will tell you it does take time, and it's not just all roses and easy to do. So it takes time. And I talk about my story of how I started this business, and I faced a lot of resistance from many people, and I had to keep pushing through. And as you know, John, as an entrepreneur of 10 businesses, you know how hard it is, and it's a roller coaster. And a lot of times you just have to have faith and just know that what you are doing is going to help people and is good, and you just keep going with it.
So I love it, Amy, because that's exactly the way I feel. I want to show you a picture here of $25.47, and the when I came to Canada from Holland in 1965. Why
Uh-huh.
Canada? Because it made such an impression on me. We were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945, when I was 5 years old. And it made such an impression on me that I knew I would go to the land of my heroes. And so
Oh.
that's what I wanted to go when I was 17, and they drafted me into the Air Force in Holland then. And then when I came out, I worked in the lumber industry for a bit, and then I went to Canada. And I left, I was not a success story academically. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times. So they said, "What are we going to do with this guy?" So some people suggested we send him to the mentally challenged school. Fortunately, my parents were beautiful people, so they decided to. I loved lumber, and my dad worked in lumber, and my grandfather was a master carpenter. Maybe we'll get him a career as a furniture maker. So they sent me to a furniture factory, and when I was 13. And then in the evenings I would go to school, and I became a furniture maker. And then,
Uh-huh.
but I always kind of was, the kids are hard on each other sometimes. All the friends that I had, in grade 7 and growing up with, they went to college and to university, and they kind of looked down on me because I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but but I was always a happy guy, a happy-go-lucky guy. And so when I left Holland, I wanted to prove to me that I was just as successful as the other guys and girls that they could do. I had to prove that to myself. So I left
Yeah.
Amsterdam with $150, three
Wow.
books, 2 sets of clothes, and on my way to British Columbia, Canada, because that I wanted to build a lumber mill. And so that was my dream. And so when I came off the bus here in Prince George, July 1965, I had my suitcase, I had my 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money 3 times. I had $25.47. Couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. But what I did have, though, and that's the point, attitude.
Mhm.
And I always hear lots of negative stuff. I don't allow negative in my life. I'm an optimist. No matter how tough today is, I know tomorrow is going to be better. And that's always been my attitude. Passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And then the other part that's important to me is work ethic. Is I work harder than anybody. Even at nearly 84, I still work 12, 16 hours a day if I have to, and I love it every day. I get up, as I said earlier, at 5:30 in the morning and always make my bed. That must be part of the Air Force. And then give it everything that I got during the day. And so just to kind of, so I very quickly became a supervisor of a mill, and then very quickly after that, I built my own lumber mill, and a couple of other ones, and another number of other companies, and so that was kind of the story of my life. And then people said to me, you should write a book about all of this. And, but writing books is not easy, as you well know. And so I thought about it for about 20 years. I stop. And then I thought if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I wrote a book against all odds. And, so it's all about not so much how successful John is, not about that. It is about all the ups and downs going all the way. And then at the end, the staying the course, never give up. There are always naysayers, and I always stayed focused on, if you keep doing the right thing and you stay with it, it will become successful. And so I wrote another book I will quickly show you, is the one about ADHD. By coincidence in 1997, I walked into a store here and I picked up a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction by Dr. Helliwell. And I don't know why I picked it up, and I looked in the book and it was about ADHD. I had no idea. The more I saw about it, I said, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in the book, now I finally know who I am, in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it. And the more I found out about it, the more I learned that a couple of things, that the frequency of occurrence probably more than 8% initially. And then the more I got to know about it, the more I believed it's likely more than 20%. And then the other part about it is that it is a superpower. It's not a liability. And, and then at some point I felt I had to write a book about it, and so that's what I did. ADHD Unlocked, very popular. You can open it anywhere and then read that way or the other one. It's an ADHD mind, so the other books are, but that's kind of what I wrote. But it's also for people that are affected by trauma or other issues that make them slow learners. Now, the interesting part about it, you may find interesting, Amy, is that, so you are podcast number 228. Podcast number 203 is Dr. Helliwell, and that wrote the book Driven to Distraction. He wrote it in 1993. I bought it in 1997. So it was unique for me to interact with him. He's an amazing individual, a major in credentials, ADHD. And, so we talked about it, and I said to him, but my experience was of it that, I said that I believe from all the things that I speak about it now frequently, write about it, obviously, podcast about it in some cases, is that that I felt that the frequency of occurrence is probably 20%. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him. And then the other part that made it interesting is that, say, the most successful entrepreneurs or CEOs, and the operative is successful, I said, 50% of them are likely ADHD. He said, no, John, 75%. And I agree with them, So I thought you may find that interesting,
Yes, it's very common for entrepreneurs to have that aspect of their brain where they are going after a lot of different things all at once, which is often needed when you're an entrepreneur, because it's not show up, do something, go home. You're considering a lot of different factors all day long, as well as, are you reaching your audience? Are you providing a service that really benefits people? But things don't always go exactly the way you want. So you have to think differently.
So what I find, Amy, is that people say to me, how come you do all this stuff? You're writing books and you have all these companies and you're speaker and a keynote speaker all over the place. And I said, it's ADHD. That's how come. That's how I can do it. Now, the other part that I find interesting is that I had the benefit of learning in a different way than other people did that are my peers. I'm very involved in industry and in leadership. The difference, and I speak about this as well, so the difference between them and me is that they have acquired the skills, university, and I'm saying it in a positive way, not a negative way. So they've learned to operate in a certain framework where me as an ADHD individual, I know what is in the box, but I look around and say, what else can we do? Why are we doing it this way? What happens if we do this? So I'm always looking outside of it, and that makes my life different and makes me effective in being a CEO. In fact, I was looking forward to hire another senior management person in my companies here that, in a management position. So we advertised it across Canada. And I not only did we lay out the skill sets that we required, but also we wrote in there that ADHD would be considered to be an asset.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you that yes, it's an asset for a lot of people, is if you know how to hone it as an asset. That's the
That's
key.
that's the key, no
A
question.
lot of people don't know how to use what skills, techniques, or whatever they have about them. Again, can you communicate with your body? Do you
Correct.
understand how your body operates and what it's telling you? So for your brain likes to go in many different directions. You listen to it. You recognize it at a certain point that that is how your body and brain prefers to work. And you said, okay, I'm going with it instead of fighting it. So you don't have the resistance that other people do who maybe fight.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's
I
excellent.
accept it as part of who I am, and I make it work for me, and that's the key. And the stigma side of it, the reason that I'm very public about it, and have been
Mhm.
for a number of years, is because I believe it is. And the other part that I say about it, and I should add that to it as well, I say to people in a general way, is that although the book says ADHD Unlocked, and it's not only for people that have ADHD, but also for trauma. But in addition to that, what I say, the frequency of occurrence is so wide that it likely is you cannot avoid it. Either it's in your family and your friends, or in the people that you work with or around you, is that it'd be interesting for anybody to read not only my book, but other books that are on the same topic, because people with ADHD tend to be a little bit different, and the better you understand them, the better you can interact with them, and they're very, very interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And it's great that you're bringing more awareness to it. And I have friends who feel ashamed to have it. It's like, just go with it. There's so
I,
much
I,
of letting go in our
I
lives
have
that we benefit.
Yeah, as you already know, that I'm a very passionate speaker, so I'm a very good speaker, I believe, and and so by the time that I give presentations and I speak about this part as well, the other day I had to give a presentation. Oh, it was about 40 people or so, I believe, and mainly junior, 35 to 45-year-old individuals, mainly male, that they wanted to have me speak. Three people speak about the lumber industry, and I was the last speaker. And I said, well, enough about the lumber industry, because the other guys already told you all. I'm not going to repeat what they said. So I have a
Yeah.
different topic for you today. I'm going to speak about ADHD, and then about being an author and writing about those kind of things. I spoke about it, and so then during that conversation, we had three people stick up their hand and saying, I never told anybody that, but I have ADHD. And so now I get to the point that when I'm done and making my presentations the way I do it, give it 150% with all the passion. And I'm an excited guy. Every day to me is, every minute of the day to me is an exciting period. And so by the time I'm done with them, they say, damn, I wish I had ADHD too.
Well, you're doing great work. That's what it's
Yeah,
all about. You're doing the right things and you're helping the right people come out and not be afraid to share how they really
exactly.
behave. Yeah.
So coming back to Us. So there are a lot of changes that are taking place, especially in the what I usually say, we have this precious body that is
Hmm.
immensely forgiving, and but it will only take abuse for so long, and then the last decade of somebody's life, which is probably the most important one, is that all of a sudden things have start to fall apart and people don't know what to do about it, and the medical system is not there really very actively in preemptive medicine, but more reactive than rather than preemptive. What
Hmm.
you are doing is already a part of that. How do you see things
Yes.
going forward to, but I say usually tongue in cheek, they say to me, you write a book about it, living young, dying old. How old do you want to be? I said, I want to be 120. So
Absolutely.
tongue in cheek, but more or less, but I'm going to take care of my body in terms of keeping it active. I'm going to do all the things that I can possibly do to remain healthy and remain being respectful of my body and understanding the signals that it is giving us. And I like all the things that are happening more so now than they have been for a long period before, in terms of new ideas about stem cells. I hear about other steps forward. How do you see it from here on forward? How do we go with the medical system? The problem that we have here in Canada is that there are not enough docs, there are not enough facilities, and a lot of people, in fact, have no doc because there are not enough of them. And how do we get to the point that people can better understand their bodies, and you obviously working towards that. I, in my way, do. And then, how do we change the system that we become more aware of being preemptive rather than reactive?
Well, when when you have less physicians and less health practitioners to help us, that means you're going to have to turn and become your own entrepreneur of your body. You're going to have to start taking ownership. So often we think of health as something that happens to us, not us taking charge of it. So self responsibility is going to become bigger and bigger. And when people don't have solutions, you'll find out who is growth oriented and who is stationary. Unfortunately, those who are stationary may get sicker or eventually find some help or change into someone who's more growth oriented who says, okay, what I'm doing right now up until this point is not working for me.
Right.
All we have to do is look in the mirror and say, our actions right now has gotten us to this point. If I want it to look different, if I want to feel differently, I have to do something different. So luckily we have the internet, we have the world at our fingertips now. So YouTube, Google searches, whatever you can do with the internet, you can find information just to help you take that next step. And as healthcare becomes more expensive or less accessible, people will have to start taking more responsibility and say, okay, I'm going to go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to drink this amount of water. I am going to go for a walk every day. I'm going to avoid going in the middle of the supermarket and buying processed stuff. People often know that they can make changes. It's
Right.
just the choice, and that choice lies within them. So I do believe that on one end of the healthcare spectrum, you have a lot of the biohacking, anti-aging, looking at different ways to for us to live longer, to get to your 120 years. And you'll have certain group segment of population that keeps funding that to try to bring that to the general population. But a lot of that is coming out with what we are just talking about. Are you sleeping enough? Are you drinking enough water? Are you exercising enough? Are you moving enough? Are you eating anti inflammatory foods? Are you calming your nervous system down? a lot of that research, as it comes out in the biohacking world as well, is supporting what we've always known to be true. Do the things that you know inherently really does improve your health, that you tell your children. Time to go to bed early. I want you to get those 8 hours of sleep. I want you to drink some water. Eat those veggies that you pushed away. We just have to start listening to the advice that we often give our kids.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the other part, Amy, is that what I found is that more so all the time now where are you located as you're speaking to me today?
So right now I'm currently in Portland, Oregon, so just a little bit south of you.
Yeah, just a little bit so. But isn't it amazing, Amy, if you think about it, there we have a podcast that is virtual. It feels
Mhm.
to me we have developed a relationship. It feels like you're sitting next to me on my couch here, and we covered a lot of stuff, very, very important. But the other part amazing about it is that I know that tens of thousands of people around the world will be watching our podcast. I know that. That's
Yeah.
what happens with it. And I think podcasting is only at its infancy, really.
Mhm.
And I believe over the last 2 years, we got a report of it here last week or so. We had in all our different media, we had up to 20 million people watching the different medias, not only on podcasting, but all over the other avenues available over the last 2.5 years, and that's only increasing now. And the part of it is that at one point we were just podcasting from around our community here, then more wider, and then we said, well, we have to locate maybe in Vancouver to set up a studio. But then we said, why not virtual? And the more we did of it, the more that's the media, and that becomes, the doors are wide open as they are for you. We have people from Australia, from Europe, all over the place. And I find it
Beautiful.
amazing.
Absolutely. Like, think about it. The ideas that we get exposed to now, we are so fortunate, even at all ages. If you have access to people around the world, you get to think about things differently. Your brain just explodes with new information and
Exactly.
it helps you create new things.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. Amy, we are at our time here. So give us once more your website. And
Absolutely. So it's
yeah, go ahead.
pabarinstitute.com. Sorry.
Okay. And
pabarinstitute.com, pabarinstitute.com.
and then the book that you showed us is available on any of the major medias like Amazon and all of those guys. Yeah.
It's on Amazon. Yep. There's 3 different books on there. I have an author page on Amazon, so you can go on, look up my name on Amazon. You can go and get any of the books that I'm involved in on there.
Let's stay in touch, Amy. And again, thank you for being my guest. It was a privilege and informative. We learned a lot, and I'm going to be watching this podcast myself as well. It will be available tomorrow morning and through all your guests, and I'm watching it with my wife over the weekend. I'm sure she's going to be very excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I appreciate you honoring me and bringing me on today. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Take care.